All right, we are back on another episode of Jesus for Mormons. I am Kai Van Leuven, and I spent over 30 years in the Mormon church, and this is my story of what I did after leaving.
And my name is Di Fields, and I'm a pastor at Venture Church in Mill Creek, Washington, and I'm along for the ride. Hearing your story.
All right, well, let's go. This is going to be a recap episode. I'm really excited to share this episode because it kind of sums up all of the episodes that we've done so far. And Di, do you remember what the name is of these episodes that we've done so far? As I was kind of charting out this podcast of what it's going to look like.
Well, I don't, but I think garbage dump, emotional dump, sad, heavy. Am I close?
You're close. I just called it the garbage.
The garbage.
The garbage.
I was close. Waste management was in my head.
Yeah. So these have been kind of the garbage episodes, the heavy, emotional stuff that, I don't know, I feel the most uncomfortable sharing. If we're being honest, like that's not really a world that I live in. I'm an emotional person, but I'm not an emotional wreck, I guess. And so it's really hard to share all these feelings. I actually had 2 more episodes written out. And I decided to kind of put those on the back burner. I think we get the feeling, or hopefully we got the picture that I was in a very depressed state and dealing with this loss, and a lot of grief in my story. And so I just wanted to, I think sometimes when you put things out there, I don't want to leave some things unsaid in this story. And so I brought up this Andrew Huberman talking about grief in a few episodes back, and I kind of butchered it, and so I want to go back and hopefully redeem myself a little bit. And just I re-listened to his podcast. So this is Andrew Huberman. He's on YouTube. Very intellectual, maybe even too intellectual for me. But he talked about grief as being a motivated state.
Okay.
Grief being a motivated state. And he kind of made that hypothesis, and then he tries to kind of back that up. And I hope that this makes some connections for people. He compared grief to really being thirsty and needing and wanting water, but it's just right outside your reach. And so you keep doing these things to try to get it, but you just can't. He said after an fMRI, which is a scan of the brain, he looked at the active areas of the brain, and pursuit and grief were in the same parts of the brain.
Oh, interesting.
Which is kind of interesting. Yeah. If you think about when I first left the church, I was just reading everything, like trying to get as much possible knowledge or information as I could. And that was really a way for me to deal with my grief. I was trying to kind of pursue this. And I believe I said it in one of the episodes that I really wanted to find out if it was true. I wanted to prove that it was true. And that was part of my pursuit in this grieving process. He said it's not just about sadness, but it's about yearning for something. And until you change the relationship that you have with that thing, that yearning will continue to exist. Which I think we can kind of think on that a little bit. I did link that podcast from Andrew Huberman. I did link that down below. So if you want to listen to that whole thing, I think it would be really helpful for people.
It makes the word pursuit makes me think of the word chase, which feels tiring. That you're always working for something that's just out of your reach is I think that's a good way to describe how grief can feel.
Sure.
I don't know that I have personal experience with that level of grief, but I have certainly watched people I care about work and work and work and work and work. So yeah, that's an interesting take.
Yeah. I think that, gosh, I just think there's so much to that. And I think that like, even for me, why is it that I still read about the Mormon church and look at things? There's a saying, Di, you might not be familiar with the saying, but it's very common in the ex-Mormon space, and it's that you can leave the church, but you can't leave the church alone. So
Like, you can leave the church if the church doesn't leave you. It's like still in there somewhere.
yeah, it's just that there's this, I think that people who have this really passionate connection, they can't easily just say, "Oh, I was." He also talks about grief as far as a proximity too.
Mm.
Dealing with grief has to actually do with proximity. So you might hear of a terrible atrocity halfway around the world where you don't know any of the people, and it probably wouldn't affect you as much
Yeah.
as something that near to you and might be maybe a little more petty, might affect you
Right.
so much more.
Yeah.
And so if you have this really deep connection
Yeah.
to someone or something, I think that makes it so much harder, and there, that grieving process to be so much more intense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I think grief is a big part of that. I unintentionally, I wasn't thinking, oh, this is going to be the first 8 episodes. A lot of it's going to be based around grief. That wasn't really my intention, and so I think this new discovery, to me at least, is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
In that respect. So, all right, this one's kind of a fun and light one, but we talked about the differences between, like this church. We're recording in a church for those of you watching. We talked about the differences between this church and the Mormon church, and one of the funniest things that I thought about, I
can't wait to hear this.
well, it's kind of small, but it's funny. Is the way that women dress.
Oh.
Was kind of like one of the most interesting things, and I do have a funny story with it. Women in the Mormon church, you always wear a dress.
Okay.
Always.
Okay.
Without exception, you wear a dress. And I invited my wife to church, my now wife, right? She was my girlfriend at the time. When we were 17, I invited her to church, and she looked gorgeous. I mean,
she always looks gorgeous.
She's a bombshell.
She
hey, what
is.
can I say?
I affirm this.
So she came to church. She looked great. I still remember she had that. It's like the black and white, and it's the smallest little checkers, and then it looks gray on pants.
Okay.
Right? She wore pants.
Uh-oh.
I know. And I remember thinking, God, in a white blouse. Oh, she looked gorgeous. So I remember thinking to myself, she looks great, but there was something inside of me. We're at the end, we're in the chapel, and I said, you look beautiful, but people here always wear dresses. Like, I would recommend the next time to wear a dress. I know, maybe I'll get canceled on this comment, but and I remember saying that to her, and now I look back and I think, oh, that is so like cringy. But then I came here and I counted 2 Sundays ago. I counted how many women in dresses I saw.
Mm-hmm.
There was one.
Oh.
And it was a singer on stage.
Okay.
So someone on the worship team that I think...
She was pregnant, so she can't fit in very many things.
There you go. So she wore a dress.
Uh-huh.
So that was a really... something, just those small little things that you don't realize. But I think it's a little bit pretentious to think that that God cares that much, I guess, about what you wear. Mm-hmm. But anyways, I'm not trying to be preachy. I'm just trying to say I don't think it really matters. So that was number 2 on this recap of like the differences. And this is kind of a light.
Wait, can I ask an honest question? You don't have to answer. But when you came to Venture for the first time and noticed that really no women were wearing dresses, how did you feel about that? Did you feel like, oh, wow, they don't take this seriously? Or
here's another real response?
Yeah. Here's another reason to not like a church like this.
Okay. Kai's going to be like nuclear 2 here. Okay, I'll turn it up just a little bit. I thought I don't really think this is like a real theological place.
Okay. All right.
So you want to wear shorts? You want to wear, you know, you want to have tattoos? Is that mean? Is that rude?
No,
Okay.
I think it's helpful to know. I mean, there's a wide variety of people here on a given Sunday. It's helpful to know what their reactions are.
Yeah, I think that
I don't feel like I have to change what I am wearing to please them, but it's interesting to know.
Well, that's good. I think that I took an approach of I'm not really here to be vested anyway. People were, you know, they could dress up like they're going to Halloween. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't, I mean, it was another thing for me to be critical of, but not in a real sense of like, I'm actually trying to make this my home. And so my criticism would mean something. Yeah. So that was kind of a funny thing. This third thing is kind of heavy. Boo. I don't like heavy things. But this is a Dave Chappelle quote. So Dave Chappelle, if you guys don't know, greatest comedian to ever live. He said the hardest thing for a person to do is to go against their tribe. Mm-hmm. And I feel that way, like with this podcast. Like this isn't... I guess that's what I've been wrestling with as I've gone through this, is just... How do I present something that how I feel and that I believe is truth, and it feels so unnatural to go against my tribe, to go against my people, you know, even from a social perspective, and so on. I don't know, sometime last week, I was at Costco and I was shopping there, and I literally ran into like everyone. We got stopped like every minute and talked with different people. We talked to 3 people. I guess I'm overreacting. But one of the people that we talked to was a good friend of mine that, well, I'll let you guys make the decision on whether or not I had influence in this person. We started working together at my old job. We worked together for a few years, 3 years maybe out of the 9. He grew up Mormon but didn't go for a while. And so I said, dude, you should start going back to church. He started going back to church, met his wife. They got married in the temple. He said, Kai, tell me about real estate. Told him about real estate. He started buying real estate. He does bigger deals than I do. You know, he's like, anyways, I believe I've had I was the best man at his wedding. Okay. Yeah. So me and this guy have a pretty tight relationship. He said, Kai, I want you to analyze a deal for me. And okay, I'll look at it. I'm not really in that mode, but I'll look at it for you. And I said, well, I have a full recording studio now. I just bought it. So it would be really easy for us to talk. And I'm not super technical, but I can figure it out now. And he said, why do you have a full recording studio? Right. And I'm like, oh, crap. Kai, of course you said too much. You always do. And I said, oh, I've just started a podcast. And he's like, dude, don't tell me it's anti-Mormon. And I'm like, well, then I'm not going to lie to you. You know? And so my point in saying that is I felt you looked at the reaction on his face and you could tell there was a lot of disappointment there. Mm. And I think that that's not really the purpose of what I'm trying to do. Right. It's not to disappoint people. Yeah. But I know that my tribe, the people that I grew up with, maybe won't have the reaction that that I would hope that they would have. Yeah. But I know that that's a reality of doing something like this. And so, I don't know. I think that's important to say, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with them, or at least I'm trying to be okay, right, with their reaction to this, and to really feel that what I'm doing is bigger than just what a few people's opinions might be of me. And at the end of the day, I think that's all I can really look at in this whole scenario is I hope that this affects a few people and that they're impacted and that they feel, like they can, that number one, that I was a lot like them. Yeah. And just so that they don't kind of gaslight themselves and say, oh, I'm this or I'm that, because I think a lot of people's stories are similar to mine.
Yeah.
So I think number one, I think that's good. And then number two, just that they can be open to a relationship with God again. And whatever that looks like, that could be in a Christian church, that could be just praying to God and having that relationship. That could be in a lot of different ways. But just to know that God's still out there and pursuing.
And they're not alone.
And they're not alone.
They're not alone. Other people, I mean, you kind of said that, but your story affirms that other people have experienced this too. I'm not the only one that's feeling this way.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyways, so Di, the garbage episodes, I don't like them, but I think they're so necessary. I think if we didn't record them, I think we would be taking away what I think a lot of people, I don't even want to say are stuck in, because I think that kind of makes me look a little elitist, like, because I still kind of struggle with some of these things. But just where a lot of people are at and may go back to, and all of those things. So, anyways.
You're the voice of hope from beyond the garbage dump.
From beyond there you go. That's a good one.
My dad growing up owned an excavation company. So we owned a dump truck.
There you go.
I've been in the dump truck, and it goes to the dump, and the back of it lifts, and all the debris goes into a hole in the ground, and you drive away and leave it there.
Good.
Which is what you did last week after our last episode. You went to the dumpster.
I did.
Right back of Venture Church.
Here at the church.
And dumped all your letters.
That's right.
Did you feel free when you did that?
I was more glad that they weren't going back to my house.
Okay.
I was more glad that no one will get to read those ever, because I don't think there's a lot of happiness and positiveness. And so in that way, I'm glad that they're gone. So I wanted to do a recap on those episodes. Di, did you have anything from those or any thoughts as we went through?
I mean, I think I can say at its most simple, I feel privileged to sit here as you are even processing things in the moment and hearing your story. And I feel privileged to know you. I feel privileged to know your family. I feel sad that you've experienced so much pain, but I truly believe, as you do, that there's hope for the future, and you're walking in it now. And I think there's still so much good things in front of you. And I'm excited to be a part of that too.
Well, thanks. Yeah. I think one thing I've gotten out of these first 8 is, Di, I'm super prepared. I've written out all my stuff.
I love that you do that.
Yeah, and you've still outshined me.
Oh, so, come on.
Here we go. So we'll see how these next ones go. And
this is all about how fast does Di's brain work in the moment.
Well, I think that's been fun. I think it's important to say, Di, before this, were we hanging out on the weekends?
No.
We just were like, I was like, hey, I'm going to start a podcast. And you were like, let's do it. Mm-hmm. And that was it. There was no forethought. We don't write this stuff together. It's just come in here, record, and Di is gracious enough to help me on my project. So
basically, if I just take a few seconds and say something, it gives you time to move on to the next part of what you've already written out. So I'm happy to be along for the ride.
All right.
On that note, good recap. Excited for the road ahead. It's like we move into chapter 2 now.
Yes, chapter 2, which is going to be really fun. So we will catch you guys on the chapter 2.
Okay.